I also was very surprised, and I did a whole birth chart reading, and it was so accurate. It was like hauntingly accurate, and I was like, actually, I need to reevaluate my life and my choices and take more risk. So.
Hi there, folks. My name is Brisa Areli Muñoz, and I'm the Director of Artistic Innovation and Emergent Magic here at MTF. And I'm joined by one of our incredible artists who's been with us for a very, very long time. Please welcome Cheeyang Ng to the conversation. We're so glad to have you here, Cheeyang.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cheeyang.
Yes. As we think about transitioning from the intersection of technology and musical storytelling, we've been talking a lot about how technology also means access. And I know that a lot of the work that you have done is about building and engaging communities with your work. And so I'm really excited for us to be in conversation about what that work is and what excites you. But let's ground ourselves first in who you are. Can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and all the ways you enjoy identifying yourself?
That's such a great question. Just to be like, oh, hi. I'm Cheeyang, and I use they, them pronouns. I am a writer, singer-songwriter, and a performer. And I have been living in New York for 13 years now, which is a really, really long time, come to think of it.
Yeah.
But I'm originally born and raised in Singapore, and yeah, I've been with MTF for, let's see, when was the first time I entered MTF's orbit? 14. So 12 years.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yeah. You've been essentially one of the OG members of the factory. It's going to be fun to recount what that journey has been.
Yeah.
But let's start on the personal level. So you said that you were born and raised in Singapore.
Yes.
What was that experience like for you growing up?
Growing up in Singapore, I was in a very middle-class family, and I think I was a very sheltered kid. Theater was never a part of my life. America was never a part of my purview, and I was the typical Singaporean kid, typical Asian kid. Did very well in school, got really good grades, and just had this slight interest in music on the side, and that was kind of my childhood.
So interesting. Yeah. So how young did this curiosity in music start, and how did you foster it little by little while you were there?
Music has always been a part of my life, my entire life, I would say. I knew I could sing pretty early on. I think the first time I ever sang on a stage was like 3 or 4 years old. As like big family functions or whatever, you would just be thrown up and thrust on the stage and kind of be singing at the time. I had formal music education in terms of piano while I was growing up. I think I started playing at 6 years old. And then I didn't follow through. I actually didn't complete all of my piano education. I did all the ABRSM stuff, which is like taking exams for piano or whatever. But then I stopped because it was really difficult and I really didn't like it. I didn't like the rigor and the consistency and the structured nature of classical
discipline,
music. And I deeply regret my decision for quitting. Because I would be a much better pianist if I did not quit. But I'm thankful. I'm thankful that I got the opportunity to do that growing up. And
you were also on a competition.
Yes, like basically the Chinese version of American Idol for school kids. So like The Voice Kids or like The Voice School Edition, whatever. That was 20 years ago now, and I was the first winner of that competition.
Oh my gosh,
yeah.
What was it like to experience that from the inside? I mean, it's such a, from going to, singing at home for family functions when you're tiny to then all of a sudden this huge stage. What was it like?
I think because it was so early on in the reality TV sphere and world, and we were in Singapore, so there were no like bribes and it was just pretty pure. And because it was the first time the station did anything like this, they didn't know how to rig the competition. At least I don't think they did. And so it was very much like, all my friends, like, you get the top 20 and you just made really good friends with all these people who just loved singing. And I was split time between school and doing the competition. The competition lasted 4 months. And I just remember very distinctly in the finals when I finally won, I felt nothing. Which is a revelation. Nothing in the moment. Because I think I'm a person. I was in therapy today and I was talking about this. I think I'm a person who is always thinking, like, what's next? And I tend to not think about what is important in the moment. And I think now, 20 years later, looking back at that moment, I'm like, oh, I'm still really thinking about, like, how I can be better and how I can, I'm so critical of myself that, like, when I did the thing, instead of celebrating the moment, I'm like, how can I prove myself that I'm actually worthy? I think that translates a lot in my work and my work ethic. And I'm actively trying to change that right now.
Would you say that you've had a moment where you felt like you are really present, taking in the incredibleness or the awe of that moment yet? Or do you feel like that is still to come?
I think the first time I actually felt very much grounded, very much in the moment, very much like, and this is recent. There has been moments, of course, but the one that in recent memory that I can remember was August of 2024 when we did the very first reading of Legendary with MTF. It was 15, 20 people in the room, and it was a first draft. It was so, like, messy and all of those things, but there was one moment when everyone started singing with me at the very end of the show, and I just, like, lost it because I just felt the energy. I just felt like, oh, I am here today because of all the things I've experienced in my life and all the people that have come into my life. Yeah, it was just a kind of surreal moment. And every time I do Legendary now, I do think about that moment and also still be very present. So I think it's a work in progress. I think my art is helping me be a little bit more grounded and in the moment. And I am actively trying to celebrate the wins instead of being like, yeah, that's great. Like,
of course. But, like,
how
being
do I be
present
better?
in them.
Yes.
I'm so excited. We're going to get a chance to talk in depth about Legendary. Before we get there, we started in Singapore, and then you found yourself in the United States.
In Boston, actually.
Really? Mm-hmm. Okay. Tell us how, why, what was that like?
I went to college at Berkeley College of Music in Boston. I was there for 2 years. I sped through, again, very not in the moment. I sped through college because I was like, I didn't have money. I need to make sure that I can survive in the U.S. I want to figure out how to live in the U.S. After I graduate. So I was very eager to get out of college. Again, in hindsight, now I'm like, Berkeley, if you want to sponsor me and let me take a 401 class, I would love to go back.
Berkeley!
But yeah, I was very much an impatient person, and I was like, let's get through education and let's see what the real world is all about. Oh, how I regretted that decision. Yeah, I lived in Boston for 2 years, and then right after college, I moved straight to New York in 2013. So I've been here for 13 years.
Okay. And that's around, so if you were saying 2014, which is around the time when you met MTF, that's also when it was founded. So you were in early. The beginning. How did that happen?
In the beginning.
What do you remember in the beginning? You'll understand this joke later when we talk about Legendary.
What do I remember? I just remember MTF was in this beautiful black box space that also doubled as a gay porn studio. And it was my first time in a hardcore gay porn studio. One side was the black box and the other side was just racks and racks and racks of DVDs. And I was like, wow, I have never seen so much porn in my life. In person, like right there in my face. But MTF, when it first started, was really, I was not one of the founding members because I think MTF started maybe like late 2013 and I came in like a couple months after.
Yeah.
And because that was my actual probably first foray into musical theater in the city. So with MTF, I found a group of people that really wanted to do new musical theater. came from all kinds of backgrounds, and I really felt very welcomed. It was the first time in my life in theater that I didn't feel like I needed to be pigeonholed into certain things. It just felt like possibilities were endless. And also at the time, the founding artistic director, Shakina, I told her, there's this like show that I've been like sitting on. I don't know. It's just in my laptop somewhere. And she said, just write it and we'll give you 15 minutes to put it up. And so that was my first ever musical that I wrote. We had nothing and we just wrote 15 minutes of it and did the first one of the first 4x15s at MTF. And that was one of the most incredible experiences that I've ever experienced. It was scrappy. We didn't know what we were doing. It was our first show and we wrote a thing with an idea and people really responded incredibly to it. And I probably owe my musical theater writing career to MTF. I'm not gonna lie. Like, yeah.
You know what, though? I feel so grateful because as someone who wasn't there in those early days, but as someone who's been present with you now in these past few years, it's such a gift to witness artists who are willing to acknowledge the antecedents and like how things came to be. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like, especially within developmental organizations, artists will move in and out of those spaces. You know, it's like, oh, I got a residency here and that's done. And then they're gone. I've never experienced that with you. You have always felt so deeply integrated into the community and the ways that you also uplift the company so that it can be more widely known and serve more artists, is really touching. Yeah.
I think it's a two-way street.
Yes.
I think I have been in relationship to many other organizations that invest in their artists very differently. And I've never felt that MTF... I've always felt that MTF has been someone that invests in the artist, not just the work.
Yeah.
Like, MTF as an organization is interested in the longevity of an artist's career, not what this moment or what this project could mean for the mutual benefit. You know, I think it's more than that. I think more organizations should be investing in artists, and because the truth is we're just going to be writing our whole lives, and so, you know, you can't, if one thing fails, it does not mean that the artist is not an artist.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, I've always felt like MTF has been very strongly invested in the growth of the artist. And again, all the things that I have done, Legendary included, came as a kernel of an idea that I didn't even know what it was, and MTF said yes, you know.
I want to remember that moment. So you started by writing your first 15-minute musical via MTF. At some point you were running MTF's social media?
I was studying social media, and at the time I was really trying to figure out like this was pre like big influencers, big creators. This was like early on when Instagram was like kind of still aesthetic based. Yeah. And so a lot of the social media that I did with MTF was like aesthetic based and trying to curate like a feel and sense of like
vibe.
Yeah, like a vibe and clean. I mean, my aesthetic also. So like it gave me a lot of insight to how to kind of promote an organization, which is very different from promoting like individuals.
Yeah.
Which I guess is also a precursor to me starting my little social media boon.
Yes. Which we're going to dig deeply into. Yeah. Okay, so 4x15, social media, member of the community for many years, and then you applied for our Makers program.
Yes.
So our Makers program is an opportunity for artists to get 2 years of developmental support for the projects that they're working on. And the program is not just about having a clear idea or a polished piece or a polished version to present. Sometimes it's just about the kernel of an idea that feels really exciting. And you were one of those people who came in with the kernel, just the kernel of an idea. And we keep talking about Legendary. Here's the moment. Tell us about Legendary. First tell us about like that moment, that kernel moment, and then what unfolded from there.
Yeah, I knew I wanted to write a piece about Chinese mythology, and I've been wanting to write a piece about Chinese mythology for as long as I can remember. I remember I went to grad school in NYU, and while I was at NYU, I sketched out some ideas for like maybe a song cycle, maybe just like starting ideas, and it didn't quite work. It just didn't make sense, too much sense. And so I kind of pitched the idea to MTF, and I said, I don't know what it is. I might want a huge ass choir. That will be unproducible, but maybe I just don't know what it is. But I know it's going to be about Chinese mythology, and it's going to be about me moving to America and just kind of like that bridge of what that could look like.
Yeah.
And because MTF said yes, and it's not just MTF, it was MTF who said yes in 2023. And then I went up to Goodspeed in 2024 in January, and it was there that I wrote the first 3 songs of the show, which is also very rare because I usually rewrite my songs to death. And the 3 songs that I wrote have not changed from my time at Goodspeed. Yeah, and it has been, I don't know, I have been very surprised by the reception of the piece and people, yeah, I mean, again, you just never know.
Yeah. And what you thought might have been a big choral piece turned into a solo show where the audience becomes the chorus.
Correct. Having been in the industry for a little bit now, and having done both producerial stuff and the writer stuff, like on a lot of fronts, I think the thing that really excited me was putting parameters around how do I make the most producible show.
Yes.
In the sense of like the most producible musical, the cheapest musical, in that sense, because labor is typically the highest cost in theater.
Yeah.
And so if I wrote a 20-person show, which all of my shows are mostly 20 people shows, I'm gonna push a huge, block up a hill again. And so I was like, okay, how do I do a 180 and do something that is completely different from what I have been used to doing, which is writing epic stories. But this is also a very epic story contained within a one-person medium.
Correct. It does not feel like there's only one person on that stage. It doesn't, because of the really exciting ways that you're thinking about participation.
Yeah.
And I remember in that maker's journey, you also got paired with your dramaturg.
Yes, my dramaturg extraordinaire. Shout out to Annie.
Love
Annie. Who is now running, she's the artistic associate at East West Players
That's
in
right.
Los Angeles.
Shout out East West Players. Yeah, so you all started collabing towards the beginning, and it was really exciting to witness the ways you were experimenting. You were like, I want to take a certain moment and I want to find a way to engage the audience, and I want to invite them to sing, but how do I prepare them to do that? Am I using a screen in the back and, showing the lyrics? Am I teaching it to them, auditorily and then having them repeat back? It was so fun to watch the ways that you were experimenting. And my experience as the piece continues to evolve is just how seamless and magical, but also epic it is. It's a real treat.
Thank you.
Yes. Tell us about the different lives that the piece has lived in. It's now been experienced by audiences. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think, again, a lot of the opportunities to develop the piece came with Musical Theater Factory. The first reading that we did in 2024, like I was saying, was just like 15 of my closest friends and who might know parts of my journey coming to America, but not really the full story. And at the time, it was still partially fiction, and kind of, so I don't know. Every step of the way of creating this piece, I had questions that I needed answers for, right? The very first draft, I think, one of the biggest questions that came from my dramaturg was, why is the audience singing? Like, what do you need from the audience? And so I've always known from the from when I first started writing the piece, was that the goal of everyone doing this communal event is that by the end of it, we make a new myth together. So a little bit of context for Legendary, right? It is a piece about Chinese mythology, but it is a piece about how queer people, trans people, people like myself, have not really found ourselves in the stories that have been passed down from generation to generation. and everything that I learned as a child about these stories were very binary. It was always about how the man needs to behave in a certain way and how the woman would need to behave in a certain way. And if you did that, you would achieve some kind of divinity or enlightenment. And Legendary is me trying to find my way into this world of stories. And every single time we came back to it, workshopping it, I just distinctly remember the first time I did the ending, which was the last 3 songs. No. The first time I did the opening, which was the first number since coming back from Goodspeed at a little gathering salon that MTF was hosting. It was the first time I did it in New York. It was the first time I did it for people who, there were a combination of writer friends and a combination of people who were not writers in the room. It was the time when I reconnected with my really good friend Joe, right? Who we've known each other for a really long time. We did summer stock together, and it was his first experience of the piece, and he was like, "This is transformative." And then I remember another salon where I was trying the ending, where I was like, I don't know how to end it, but this is kind of how I envision it. How I envision answering the question, why are we singing together? Why are we building this thing together? What does it mean to build a new myth together? Let's give that a try. And it went like incredibly well.
Yes!
I was like, whoa. With no idea how to do a lot of the audience interaction stuff. There were just like maybe some guidelines or some guideposts that I wrote and envisioned.
Yeah.
But then given the opportunity to try it and then learning what is working, what rhythms are working, what, again, I think theater is not made in a day. I think writing is not done in a day. It's like you have to experiment. You have to try. And some of this trying involves technology. Some of this trying involves not technology. You know, just like the organic nature of making theater in community. And I think the other big question that I had was like, in this day and age of AI, like, how do we, like, why are we sitting down together in a black box and experiencing something? Like, you have all these other resources and all these other things you could be doing. Why am I making you sit down with me? And why am I making you sing? So.
Yeah. Brandon Powers, our artistic innovation lead, he talks a little bit about how as we think about the future and as we think about AI, that in some ways, theater is the thing that's sacredly protected in all of that, because the more and more that we have access to those tools, the more and more we're going to crave our own humanity.
I say this a lot, and I'm not a predictive person, but I would put my money on the fact that anything that is in person will soon become a luxury commodity. It will soon become something that people will pay a lot of money to experience, because everything else is now so easily accessible, but it's mostly slop.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
which then requires the fine-tooth comb of an artist to be able to curate that journey for people. And you're someone who has found a way to create relationships with audiences digitally. And I think that's a big curiosity of a lot of our artists is, you know, they're asking themselves that question of what's our responsibility in finding our audience. And I'm curious, what was that journey for you, and what has been the experience of building those audiences when they're not just sitting right next to you?
I think for a long time, I've been really averse to social media, because I know social media for the influencers, right? For people who value aesthetic over substance, who value this very curated world of, I wouldn't say it's fake. I would just say that it's curated, that it's one part of their lives that is not the most, might not be the most authentic. So for a long time, I'm like, I'm an artist. I create work. I create work on my own terms, and I don't want to be performative in that way. And also, that was one aspect. Another aspect was that I was really afraid of discussing who I was publicly with, especially for my family, because at the time I was not out to my family. Both on sexuality and gender side, like all the conversations around those, I was like, let me not talk about this publicly so that it is, you know, hidden and
Yeah.
they're protected.
Yeah.
But then I don't think we never had this conversation, but I went to a meditation retreat and I saw my ancestors, which is also really funny because when I was doing Legendary before, I was like, when I'm singing about my ancestors, I was like, are they actually listening? I don't know. But I felt them when we were doing it, and then I saw them when I was at the retreat, and I was like, fuck this. If they're so calm, so they were really calm. They were just like sitting and chilling.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, if they're just so chill about who I am and they're so at peace, why am I, again, going back to the being in the present and not like being so cynical and being so critical of myself, you know, like why am I holding myself to these standards that are completely unattainable? Why can't I just be as truthful as I can? So when that felt really liberating in that moment, I was like, okay, I know business. Like I went to school for business for a little bit. I went to school for music business as well. I know how to treat social media as a business as well. But at the same time, instead of thinking of it as curating a perfect life, why don't I think about it as documenting parts of my life that people might be interested in seeing that they might not have access to? And perhaps by doing that, I could find my community. I could figure out who I'm actually speaking to as a person, because people do not invest in products. People invest in people. And so I was like, all right, if I'm going to treat it as documenting, then I will be the most honest version of myself. I'm going to just be like my very first video. It's almost 1 million views now. It's kind of crazy to think, like, day one I posted, I was like, I'll be so happy if it get 10,000 views. That would be such a feat. And the next morning I woke up, it was like at 300,000 or 400,000. And I was like, that's my first video. That was my first
It was so
social media.
surreal.
First. And I was like, I guess when things align, that's what it is.
Yeah.
You know, you don't. And I do follow a lot of creators online that teach people how to do social media and all those things. But do you know something that I realize is that a lot of these creators don't talk about the artist because they don't know how to build an artist profile, because the hardest thing to grow on social media is actually as an artist, because you're not trying to sell some kind of product, you're not trying to sell you're not trying to do all these things that are outside of you.
Yeah.
You are saying, this is who I am and you should invest in me as a person. And that is so hard because there are so many people in the world, so like, why do we need to care about you? But I truly believe that every single person has a story to tell. Every artist has a story to tell that you already know how to tell it because you're making art. Whether you're a painter, whether you're a writer, whether you're a performer, you have a story to tell. And if you look at social media as a platform for opportunity to reach people that you would never in a million years be able to reach, then think of it as, I'm here documenting my life. I'm here sharing a part of myself and in search of seeing who could resonate with the story that I'm telling and building that community, right? Never in a million years would I think that I would sell out concerts in London. I have 5 friends in London. 5. I have 5 friends in London. And people came from Manchester. They just came from all over the UK to come and see a little tiny show in a black box, just from social media. There were no paid ads. I've not spent a single cent on paid ads. It's just organic posting. And similarly with Singapore, I thought, oh, I could only do 2 shows, maybe like 200 people each. No, I sold out 4 shows and people still couldn't get tickets. And I was like, okay, there is something about social media that is very powerful if you figure out how to use it in the right way. I'm always thinking about how we balance art and commerce, because we live in a capitalist world that is not going away anytime soon. So yes, we need to have anti-capitalist practices, but at the same time, we need to recognize that this status quo is not changing. We're fighting against it, but we also need to learn how to live in it. I was reading this book actually recently about 7 or 8 kinds of wealth, and it's not just monetarily, it's spiritually, health, it's so many other relationships. It's like, but money, I grew up in a very middle class household, and I was very averse to being like, oh, I need to think about money, because I'm always like, as long as I have enough, it's enough.
Yep.
But I am now in a place in my life where I'm like, I can have it all. Like, the abundance of it. And of course, not in the sense of like, I want to be a billionaire and hoard all wealth and all of those. But I want to be rich in the sense of like, if I want to go write a book on a beach tomorrow, I can just do that. If I have to travel home and see my parents from New York and fly a 19-hour flight just to get home, I can do that without tiring myself out. Like, I want to be able to fuel my creative life at the same time as not worrying about how am I going to get my next meal, you know?
Yeah.
And I think for the longest time, I thought as an artist, I need to be a starving artist. And I am no longer... I don't believe in that anymore. I believe that we can be abundant and there are so many tools at our disposal that we can use to balance the art and commerce of it all. And I truly think social media, it's not going to last forever, but in these next 5 to 7 years, social media is a tool that is free for everyone to use. And the reach that you have right now on social media is unprecedented. Anyone. We're actually no longer, oh my God, I'm quoting all these people that I watch, but like, we're no longer in the age of influencers. We're not really in the age of like social media. We're really in the age of interest media, which means that tomorrow anyone can pick up a phone and post a video and go viral. Again, this is a whole other conversation, but like, going viral doesn't mean that you'll make money, but like, anyone can post something new and get the same amount of reach as me, who I don't have that many followers, 50,000 followers, 80,000 out of 2 platforms, which is not that much, but I've only been posting for 8 months. So like, anything is possible. And I genuinely think like the hardest thing that I've learned about social media is consistency. It's the same as going to the gym. I suck at going to the gym. I'm so bad at it, but I figured out how to hold myself accountable and be consistent. That is the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
Hardest thing to do, to be consistent.
Yeah.
Hello, hello, hello. This is Areli Knox, and I am co-executive director of Musical Theater Factory, specifically the director of decolonization and sustainability. And I am coming at you to remind you to subscribe to The Vibe. The Vibe is to get all of the information you could possibly desire about the Musical Theater Factory community. We let you know what our artists are doing in the world. We let you know what they're doing in our home, in our community base, and it has lots of tips and tricks and links to help you further your career, whether you're a director, an actor, a writer, or just an audience member who wants to stay plugged in. If you want to be tapped into all things amazing in New York, especially within MTF, subscribe to The Vibe.
It's so interesting because in some ways you've greenlit your own abundance in so many ways. So on one hand, you're thinking about the business of theater and you're saying it's going to be so much harder to fund a 20-person musical. So you know what? I'm going to do a solo show and the audience is going to be my fellow performers, you know? And then you've found a way to build audiences digitally so that when you go to Singapore or London or wherever, you essentially have a built-in international audience. So I'm curious about how that sits with you as we think about like the power and positionality that you now yield when dealing with theater institutions or producers who want to put up your work. You know, what does it feel like to now have some of that power and not just feel powerless to whoever might want to produce my show and take a risk or a chance on me, you know?
Surprisingly, I just think we in the producerial side of theater, we're so limited by how we have been doing it for so long. And I was like, I understand why it costs so much money. I understand the technicalities of it because I look at budgets all day long also. And at the same time, I'm like, my shows in Singapore, I did 4 shows in Singapore. It yielded an 80% profit, which is unthinkable in theater.
Totally.
80%? Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's crazy. And I'm like, how do we create models that sit outside of what we already existingly like know and think about how do we create work and create experiences that is not limited to this Broadway way of doing things. I just think greed from theater owners, unfortunately, that's just like greed from all parties involved. I'm like, cut the middleman as much as I can. Cut. And you know who gets to benefit? Everyone. The consumer gets to benefit. The person who's doing the work gets to benefit because it's not marked up by like 600%. And so to answer your question, I am really interested in new ways of making experiences, theatrical experiences. I am no longer interested in institutions saying this is the only way to do it. I'm interested in this was a philosophy that I had. I am no longer interested in like begging for you to work with me. I'm like, if you're not clamoring to work with me, then I don't need to work with you.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Agreed.
Like everything that we've built with community and with people who really want to engage with the work. There is no reason I should knock on, I'm not going to name names, but knock on certain doors and be like, come and do my work. I am at a point in my life where like my work speaks for itself, and I am not at a point where I'm trying to prove anything anymore. I am more interested in like building a group of people, a community in all sense of the word, right? Mm-hmm. Community partners, community leaders, community who wants to engage in the work on all different levels. People who are starting out in the industry, people who are disconnected from the industry, who have never seen themselves in the industry, who want to see something that they could relate to. All of my work, not just Legendary. I have 6 shows that I'm writing right now. Every single piece of my work is always at some kind of intersection of being queer, of being Asian, and being an immigrant. Like 2 or 3 of those intersections. And I just think our current institutions are so tied to what their existing audiences want to see, which I'm like, I'm not trying to alienate your existing audiences. I'm saying that we can bring everyone together, because let's stop looking at our differences and start looking at our similarities and start looking at our humanity through the artistry of our work.
Yes, which is also the work that we have to do as a society. So it's really beautiful the ways in which this is a microcosm of the larger systemic issues at play here. Thank you for uplifting it. I think I want to end with tips that you might offer creators who are seeking to do the work that you're doing, building audiences or thinking about the business of theater and being responsible about how you make the work. What do you have to offer artists who are curious to follow in your footsteps?
I would say the most important thing with regards to, I'll split it into 2 categories. One is the artistry side of things. For the artistry side of things, stop thinking about what other people want to see. Start thinking about what you want to say. Like, who are you as an artist? So, like, create from a place of abundance from yourself and from the questions that you want answered. But then that is in juxtaposition to the business side of things, which is like, the business side of things is always about what do people want to see. But I'm always a firm believer that, like, the work will find its people if you figure out how to get in touch with the people that want to see the work. And the way that I found helpful was to post on social media. And your first 100 posts, you should just treat it as data. Like, you will fail, and you will fail, and you will fail. And you should just keep going and use that as data. And then let me tell you, in the first 100 posts, let's say you post every single day, there will be a video that works. And then you'll be like, why did that work? What? In that sense, like, what did people respond to? And then you analyze that and you duplicate that. And then you study social media like a business and treat it as marketing that is basically free, right? It is free. The only thing you have to give up is your time, but time that you will get back is sweat equity that you will get back tenfold if you commit to it. I've actually, a lot of my friends, because of how I've started posting on social media, have reached out and were like, oh my God, I really want to do what you're doing. I really want to be doing this. And every single one of them, I just say, you have to post. You just have to stick to a consistency that you can adhere to, because it's so easy to skip a day at the gym. Like me. It's so easy. You can give yourself a million reasons. So for me, when I started posting July 8th of 2025, I did have crippling anxiety after that first post did so well. I was like, I can't replicate that ever again. And once I started just like consistently posting, I have not stopped. And it's been almost 9 months now. I post every single day. And you just have to get into a rhythm of yourself and use the first 100 posts as data. It's like market research, you know, and it's free market research. You get free data. If something's not working, try something else. And I think I do encourage everyone to not be like me in the past, in the sense of like treating artistry and business as two separate things. One of my mentors at ASCAP, the PRO, said, this is the music business. Business is a longer word than music, so maybe you should put a little bit more time in that. I genuinely believe that everyone with a brain can figure out how to reach the audience that would resonate with your work. Every artist is capable of doing that. The question is whether you want to put in the time and energy to do that, and also think about who you are that separates you from everyone else in the market, that is authentic and truthful to you. I think it's really hard when you start, and this you've seen as well multiple times, when people are not themselves and then they succeed and then now they're trapped in a little box that they can't get out of.
Yes.
And I've seen people with millions and millions of followers get in that trap, and now they are trying to dig themselves out. And the most important thing, I believe this is the most important thing, is go fail. Go fail. I failed flat on my face so many times. And I think treat every failure as data, and then you'll be golden.
Thank you, Cheeyang, for this conversation. Speaking of social media, how can people find you?
You can find me on all social media: Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, my website. I'm on all socials as Cheeyang Music, CheeYang Music. And you can find me on my website, cheeyang.com.
Incredible. Such a joy to be in conversation with you. Thank you so much, folks, for being with us. I'm Brisa Areli Muñoz, Director of Artistic Innovation and Emergent Magic, and this was another episode of Fast Forward. See you soon.
Hey there, it's Areli Knox, Co-Executive Director of Musical Theater Factory, specifically Director of Decolonization and Sustainability, and I am here to remind you that if anyone's got us, we got us. In this time of chaos and insanity, invest in the community that is investing in you. Invest in the We Got Us Fund, a new initiative by MTF to make sure that every single member of our community is not getting paid just a living wage, is not getting paid in exposure, is not getting paid in promises, but it's getting paid a thriving wage. Yeah, you heard me, a thriving wage. Help us ensure that everyone in your community, everyone in our community is able to not just live, but thrive. Invest in the We Got Us Fund today.
Hey everyone, I'm Fallon, and thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Fast Forward. I am on the MTF staff as the Coordinator of Connectivity and Systems. And if you want to stay tuned in, please like, subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss future episodes, upcoming releases, and live tapings. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Final question. What are your star signs?
I am a Sagittarius sun.
You hear that, Sydney? One of our fellow staff members, when we asked his star sign, he said, I'm an adult.
No.
Sydney! We're just calling you out now. Love you! Thanks, Cheeyang.
Thank you.